What is going on, everybody, and welcome. Justin Hickox here. I hope you can hear me now. There are some issues with the audio, so I apologize for that, but I think now everything should be good. So jump on, shoot me a little quick little text here, a little comment, and let me know that you can hear everything and everything is good. If you're new to me, my name is Justin Hickox. I have been doing hair for about 26 years now, and I have owned a salon for a little over 20. So what I like to do on my channel is hopefully make your hair a little easier for you by sharing tips, little secrets, little things that I've learned behind the chair that hopefully, like I said, will make your hair life not as difficult. And today I'm going to be sharing some of my top, I would say, secrets that people always ask about on how to create volume with hair. If I'm honest, probably one of the questions I get asked the most often is how to get volume. And there's a lot of reasons behind it. There's a lot of little nuances to creating volume that I'm going to be sharing today. But I also went onto my community page last week and I asked you what questions you have about hair in general, as well as on Instagram. And so I'm going to be covering some of those questions for you today as well. But again, very quickly, if you're live with me right now, go ahead and shoot me a little chat. Let me know that you can hear everything okay. It does look like there is some audio, so we should be good, but I would love to hear a little feedback. So jump on there and shoot me a chat real quick. Okay, so let's jump into some of the tips that we have as far as how you can create volume in hair. Let's go through here real quick. Okay, so I've got all my stuff opened up over here on the screen. So if you see me looking over here, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just making sure that I cover everything and I don't miss anything for you. So let me look here real quick. I just want to look at the chat settings and make sure that everything is good. So again, if you can hear me, go ahead and chat and let me know that everything is good and you can hear me. Okay, it sounds like you've got some questions about shine as well, so we're going to get to those. So if you have questions that you want me to cover today, don't ask them yet because it'll get overwhelming in the chat and I will miss them likely. So I will give you a time. I'll tell you when to start asking those questions. That way I can make sure that I hit as many as possible. I don't want to miss anyone. So make sure that you let me know at the appropriate time. Okay, again, if you can hear me, go ahead and let me know. So first of all, let's talk about just creating volume in general. Now, the first kind of secret I would say about creating volume is starts with the shape in the cut, or it starts with the cut to begin with. If you don't have some sort of layering in your cut, it's going to be very difficult for you to create volume. Now, I know a lot of people are very concerned about layers. I know there's a lot of people out there that are really worried about maybe making their hair look too thin, maybe just had bad layering in the past, and I fully understand that. But here's why I say layering is so important. Layering on some level, granted done correctly, doesn't just lighten up your hair to create volume, it also removes volume from other areas. I think a lot of people can overlook the idea that hair is essentially an optical illusion. So when your hair looks full in one area, it will create the illusion that there's less volume in other areas, therefore looking flatter in other areas. Many times this happens on longer hair. When I say longer hair, I realize it's not long, but when I say longer, what I mean is roughly past the collarbone. In some cases, depending on your texture, even at the shoulders, right? It'll have a tendency, especially if it's one length, to get very triangular. Okay, hair doesn't, especially if you've got any wave or curl in your hair, it doesn't grow down, it tends to kind of grow out. And what that triangular shape does, and I've talked about this in multiple of my videos, what that triangular shape does is it creates the illusion there's more volume here, and it makes the top right up here look flat. It draws the eye down and out instead of lifting the eye up. Now, this is very important because if we relieve that volume through layering, and there is a difference between layering and texturizing or thinning, but if we really relieve this volume through here through layering, it doesn't just lighten the top hair up to give us more volume, but it also takes some of that hair out of the bottom. So honestly, there's just not enough hair to reach the bottom to create that fullness. And there, what we end up with is hair that has the ability to get more volume up here. This hair automatically, because it doesn't have as much hair to be full, has a tendency to look a little bit less voluminous. That's a word, voluminous, and therefore creates the illusion there's more volume on top. Many times, if you look in a mirror, and I do this to clients all the time, and their hair is really full on the sides and it's flat on the top, if I just take my fingers and just lightly push in on the hair and I don't touch the top at all, just taking this volume out of the sides, you'll look at the top and it looks like there's more lift. It looks like there's more volume. Again, it's just an optical illusion. So layers done correctly, layering really is the best, most efficient way to texturize or thin hair out. And two, absolutely the most efficient in trying to create actual volume in hair. Aside from the fact, like we said, that it does lighten hair up as well. Okay, so the next biggest secret, once you've got some layering in your hair, and we also want to pay attention to the right length on that. So just to kind of jump back to that, the longer your hair is, the less it supports layering. Now, I get a lot of grief from some folks on my YouTube videos when we're talking about long hair, because a lot of people they get very attached to long one-length hair. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's your thing and that's what makes you feel good and you're confident in it, sweet, rock with it. But from the perspective of adding layers and creating more shape in hair, it's not my opinion, it's just a simple fact that hair will dictate layering. If I have hair down to my waist, or if you have hair, let's say down to here, and I cut layers on the top that are this long, they're not gonna make any sense with the length. They have to be long enough to balance with the length and to have nice shape. The longer your hair is, obviously that means that those layers are going to end up being longer, meaning longer hair. Longer hair ends up being heavier. That's just a weight thing. That's not my opinion. Again, that's just hair. Any texture, the longer it gets, is going to get heavier. It's got more length. And that, therefore, it's going to be much harder, even though it's got some layering at the bottom, for instance, it's going to be much harder for that hair to still get more lift, because even though it's shorter than the actual length, it's still long hair, and therefore it's still heavy. So keep that in mind as well. If you got long hair, you want it down to your waist, you want it one length, great, more power to you, like I said. Okay, so the next step or secret, I would say, is adding some sort of product. I know a lot of people want to shy away from product because, one, they don't want to spend the time with product, or two, they don't want to have the texture of product in their hair. But I'm here to tell you that clean hair, perfectly clean hair, does not inherently create volume. What products do as a whole, the purpose of products, is to create the illusion of dirt. Okay, it's essentially to create dirty hair without quite so much oil, so it doesn't get so weighed down. But it needs to give your hair a little bit of texture. Perfectly clean hair, typically, and this again is going to depend on the texture, but I will say that there's a difference between having volume and shape and having big hair. Okay, those are two different things. So just because your hair is thick and wavy doesn't inherently mean you have volume, right? You have, or shape from volume. You have just big hair. So creating volume is more about creating some sort of foundation in the hair to hold the volume. Sorry, I was reading the comments here, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Patagonia. I'm sorry if I'm sure that I messed that name up right there. But having that a little bit of volume in your hair, or having that product in your hair to create the foundation, is going to be a huge, huge deal. It's absolutely important. I know the question is going to come up, well, what product do you recommend? And so here's what I'll tell you about products in general. I don't have one specific product that I recommend. Yes, I have my own line. I've done videos about one of my products. It took me about a year of doing YouTube videos and gaining an audience before I actually even told anybody about my line, because it's very important that you folks and my clients trust that I'm not just trying to sell you a product to sell your product. That's not my game. It's never been, in my 26 years of doing hair, what I've been about. It's just not me. If it doesn't work, I don't care if you buy it. I don't want you to buy it. That makes no sense. It's going to make me look bad, and it's not going to work for you. So all in all, I'm pretty particular about what I recommend. But with that said, I haven't tried every product out there. It's impossible. There are so many products, it's tough to tell you. So I'll give you a more generalized idea as to what you're looking for when you look at a product. Generally speaking, when you're trying to talk about volume, you're speaking in the realm of gels, mousses, or styling creams, right? Gels have a tendency to be a little bit more controlling. They'll give your hair a little bit more hold, but more often than not, they also feel like there's a lot more product in your hair. Gels, especially if you're using them on wavy or curly hair, you can have a tendency to find that they end up with the wet look. They get very crunchy, and it's really hard to get that wet look out. Now, conversely, when you're looking at mousses, typically speaking, mousses have a tendency to be a little bit lighter. They can give the hair a much softer feeling. They have a tendency to feel like you've got less product in your hair. But with that said, they also have a tendency to give you less actual control for volume. So depending on what hair texture you have and how much foundation you need, a mousse may or may not be too good, may or may not be enough for you. Whereas a gel may or may not be too much for you. Right? Now, when you're moving into styling creams, many times styling creams, one that you may have heard of is from a company called Bumble and Bumble. They have Bumble and Bumble styling cream. They've been out for years. It's a thickening cream. So thickening creams is another name for this kind of product. Thickening creams lean more towards gels in terms of their application style. They're typically gel consistency and their volume ability, the way they create volume, the way they function in hair. So understanding what you're using is going to be important. I would say that if you've got very fine hair or very thin hair, if you're in that scenario and you use a mousse, you'll probably find that most actual true to form mousses aren't really going to be strong enough for you. And when you use too much, again, depending on what product you use, it may or may not weigh your hair down. So you do want to pay attention to that. You might be better off looking more towards the styling creams or the styling lotions. But what I would say is try a few of them and see what works. But also, anytime we're talking about volume and we're talking about using a foundational product, I like to tell people to make sure that you start with too much. Okay, this is very counterintuitive to what a lot of people think. They don't want to use too much product in their hair because they're worried it's going to weigh it down. Use it on a Sunday or on a day where you don't have to worry about your hair. If it doesn't look great, you can shampoo it out. But start with using too much product first to figure out how much you need to dial back to make sure that you get enough. More often than not, I find that people actually don't use enough. They put a tiny bit of product in their hand and they put it in their hair. It doesn't even have enough product to actually emulsify their hair. We'll talk about that in a second. And all of a sudden, they're not getting the volume and they feel, well, I don't want to use more because it'll weigh my hair down. Well, realistically, you didn't use enough to get the benefit of it. So yes, typically speaking, you can use too much, but you also want to make sure that you're using enough. So sort of that way. Now, when we're talking about applying the product is actually just as important as using the correct product. So if we're talking about getting volume, we need to understand that volume is not created by root lift alone. What that means, and I'll show you here in just a second, but what that means is if you want to create a foundation for volume, you need to have product from your roots through the midshaft all the way to the ends. This is very important. If you only have it at just the roots, you may get a little bit of root lift, but you're not going to get bend. Now, let me show you if I can show you. Of course, I'm wearing black and this is all black. So let me see if I can give you an idea of the difference here between bend and root lift, okay? So we'll go like this. Okay, can you guys see this at all? Okay. Hopefully there's enough light there. So root lift is just a little bit of root lift at the very, very, very roots, okay? You just get a little bit of lift right here, okay? So just a tiny bit of like lift right at the roots. Bend is, there we go. That, folks, is bend. See how the entire head or that entire hair strand has an overall bend to it, okay? That's kind of bend, true bend. So you're not just looking for this to be a little bit of bend at the very roots. You're looking for an entire bend in that hair shaft from roots all the way to midshaft, all the way to the ends. That is where you get true volume and shape out of. This is a very, very important part of this. If there was any tip I can give you about creating volume in your hair, I don't want you to miss this one. Root lift is only root lift. And a lot of people focus a lot on applying product to the roots, drying their hair upside down, which again, we'll talk about in a second, to create root lift. And then they round brush the very ends to smooth the ends out, or they flat iron the very ends to smooth the ends out, but they don't pay attention to the mid shaft. And I will tell you, if this is a strand of hair and this is your root, this is the end, people spend their time right on these two 10%, okay? 10% of the roots and 10% of the ends. And they fail to pay attention to the other 80%, which is where 80% of your volume is created. Now, the way that you create that bend in your hair is either by using a round brush or a flat iron. Typically speaking, flat brush, paddle brushes, or just drying your hair upside down after you've got out of the shower is not going to be enough. That is the foundation. So step by step, I would get out of the shower. I would towel blot your hair. I would apply the product. I would even consider, depending on your texture, combing the product through to make sure that you get it from roots to ends. And then I would tilt my head upside down and start to blow dry my hair. And the reason for that is to get those roots lifted up off of the scalp and to start encouraging a little bit of root lift. Then when you put your hair back up, you're going to notice that you got a little bit of root lift. That's great. But now we need to step into either round brushing it or flat ironing it. So when you're flat ironing, I have got a whole video. I'm not going to get deep into how you go about that process. So if you look back at the videos on my channel, I actually have tutorials on how to flat iron and how to round brush your hair. So make sure you go check those out, because they'll give you a step-by-step of the proper techniques and things to stay away from. But using a flat iron or a round brush to deliver a little bit of bend to your hair is going to be a big difference. But just don't forget, pay attention to the entire hair strand. You get volume from the whole thing, not just that 20%. Okay, let's see. So, creating with a flash. Okay, so now that you've got a little bit of shape in your hair, okay, so we've already walked through. You need to make sure that you're using the right product, and you need to make sure that you're applying it correctly. You need to make sure that first, before all of that, you've got enough shape cut into your hair, layering likely, that you actually can create the volume. Otherwise, all of this rest of this stuff is just going to be building houses on an unstable foundation. Okay. Now, after you've gotten the haircut for it, you've got the layers, you've got the best possible chance of creating volume. You've got your hair shampooed and product applied. You've got your hair blow dried upside down. You've taken the flat iron or the round brush to it to create overall root and mid shaft and bend. Now is the final process, which is looking at either sprays to hold that volume, or you're looking at finishing products, okay? Now, I know a lot of people don't like using products, and so at this point, after you've created your bend with the flat iron and the round brush, I would just say, if you don't like using any more product in your hair, leave it alone, okay? It's not like the next steps are going to hold your volume better. And this is why this is key, okay? This is why I'm walking you through these other steps. People want to create volume and then spray it into place to hold the volume. Spray, typically hairspray, doesn't do a really great job of holding volume long-term. What it does a great job of is holding hair stiff. Holding hair stiff isn't necessarily what you want out of your style. You want some movement. When you move your head, you want your hair to have a little bit of control and shape. You'll still be able to get your hair to have control. And if you created volume in it, you should still be able to get volume in your hair. Okay, she's getting volume in her hair. You can see this right here. She's getting the appropriate amount of volume. I hate using mannequins, you guys, but you know, it's just the easiest thing to show you this right now. But there's still volume in her hair. It's not created by this spray. Spray is there typically just to help like hold things off of your face or to hold things in specific areas. But as a volumizer, it's not the best volumizer. So if you want a little bit more movement and texture and that kind of stuff to your hair, or you want to hold down some of the flyaways, spray can work, but there's other options as well. So one other option that you guys have seen, I'm sure, are finishing products like any sort of waxes or pomades, they're called, stuff like that, right? Finishing waxes and stuff. I want to just kind of walk you through the difference between them so you have a better idea of what you would be looking for if you decide that you want to use them. The reason I actually lean towards finishing waxes and pomades versus sprays when I can, and when I can is usually predicated on whether or not my client will allow me to. If I have the option, I lean towards these because these can still give you volume, but they also put back into the hair some of the shine that was lost on most volumizing aids. Many volumizing aids will have a tendency to pull some of the shine out of hair, right? They'll soak up some of that oil or however they do it, but when your end result, you end up with a product that looks a little less of that natural shine. So then you go back in and you add it in. I know this is a lot of products. So this is for the people that want to use this kind of stuff. I just want to make sure that you have the best knowledge for you. So there are differences between the types of volumizing or slash pomades or slash oils that you're seeing. And the reason I lumped volumizing in there is because there's some pomades that can create volume. Okay. So if you look at this one, this is a wax. Okay. Now if you can look at it, it's very chunky. When I put it in my hand, see how chunky that is? It's very, it's almost like a clay. Okay. Now that is, I've got it all over my hands. That is going to, if you notice how stiff or how thick that is going to have typically less shine, okay, less of oils and more control. So the probability when you see something that's of that consistency, you're going to result in a little bit more control in your hair and a little bit less shine. When you move towards the other extreme, which is something like this. Oh, I just opened this one. I forgot there's a little cap on it here, which is more like a water-based oil, not water-based, but watery in consistency oil, like a legitimate oil. Okay, so when I put this in here like this, you'll see how oily that is. Okay, now something like this is going to give your hair a lot of shine. You can see the shine on my hand, right? But it's going to give it little to no control. This is also, because of the amount of oil, going to have a probability of weighing your hair down more than something like this will. So just keep in mind, of those two extremes, as you move from a clay over and you look at it, you can literally look at the consistency of the product. You can open the canister at the store and look inside and say, oh, that looks like a gel. Don't touch it. But that looks like more of a gel or a watery wax or a stiff clay. If it looks more like a stiff clay, then its probability is going to be that's going to give you more control and a little less shine. There are different amounts of shine in those clays, but I'm kind of painting this with more of a broad brush so that you kind of have a better idea in general terms. And then oils are good. If you've got longer hair or even shorter hair and it's got a lot of volume, or wavy hair, this tendency, or curly hair, it has a lot of volume anyway, you're going to be able to get away with oils a little bit more for shine because you're probably not going to worry about your hair end up laying flat. It's going to have more volume to begin with, so that's not the concern. But if you've got finer hair textures or thinner hair textures, and you do, or even if it's fine and you've got a lot of it, okay, meaning fine individual hairs, but a lot of hair, it's dense, then you could find yourself in a scenario where too much oil actually will weigh your hair down. So be mindful of that as well. One other option you have at the very end, and this is actually just for a little bit of volume encouragement after your hair is dry. If it's this, I tend to find that this works best on short hair, but there are powders out there for volume. So it's called a dust. This is actually from L'Oreal. I've been using it lately in the salon. I really actually like it quite a bit, but you can see like it is a legitimate, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? It's a legitimate dust. Now that is surprisingly powerful little stuff here. You put this on hair, like shorter hair, a bit longer than mine on top, for instance. And if you want a lot of volume and control, you powder that onto your hair and then shake it all out and style it, and it'll give you a shocking amount of control and volume. It blows me away, but you'll definitely feel stuff like that in your hair. It's like, it's in there and it's not, you don't run your hand soft through your hair afterward. Whereas if you use a gel or a mousse or something like that, you should still be able to get some control out of moving your hands and your hair. It feels a little bit less sticky, if that's a good word. I don't know that that's the right word, but I hope I hope you understand that. And it gives you a little bit more volume. So if do you guys have any questions about that? Is this all making sense? Go ahead and comment below if you've got any questions or if I'm missing stuff. Cindy says, wow, so simple. I just realized I've been focusing on 20% of my hair and not the whole strand. Hey, not duh. Let me tell you something. I mean, honestly, Cindy, this is something that I see in the salon all the time. I answer this question over and over and over to the same clients because it really takes a lot to wrap your head around that you've always been taught: root volume, root lift, root volumizer, and smooth the ends out. People don't teach about the mid shaft of the hair as often. They don't pay attention to telling people, look, you got to think about this part of it because that's where bend comes from. And that's ultimately where volume comes from. Nobody wants just hair that stands up and then lays flat. You know what I mean? At the roots, that doesn't have shape. It looks odd, right? Like it would look like this. Nobody got time for that, right? You want a nice bend so that you can actually create that lift. So I'm glad that I'm glad that I can help you there. So as far as about root volume, Chill Out says, what about root volume? Root volume is created by the product, like we talked about it a little bit ago, in case I'm not sure if you missed or not. Is created by the product and then blow drying your hair upside down. If you blow dry your hair upside down, or if you can't tilt your head upside down and you just blow your hair strands against the way that they're going to sit at the end of this all, then that is going to create root lift. It's not hard to create root lift as long as you have a foundational volume, and then you just blow dry your hair the opposite direction of however so if you're gonna style it all to the right, blow dry it all to the left, and then bring it to the right, and you're gonna get root lift. That's just kind of, that's a default for what's gonna happen. And yes, for long hair, it's the same thing, right? You tilt your head forward all the way upside down and you blow dry it like that. That's going to give you some root lift. When you come back up, obviously, if it's long, wherever you part it on that side that's part. So let's say you part it on the left-hand side, most of your hair is going to be coming to the right. So instead, blow dry it off to the right. So lean off to the opposite direction and blow dry it this way just to kind of finish drying it, and then go back to the other side to get the one side of that part and go back and forth. And you just go back and forth, but you're trying to get it, just think wherever this hair strand is going to end up, I want to blow dry it the opposite direction so that it just lays back on itself and it's already got a little bit of control to go the other way, and that's going to create that root lift. But all of this is null and void if you don't have some sort of foundational product to help that, because all you'll end up with is volume for 5 minutes, and then your hair will eventually lay back down, which I'm sure many of you have experienced that in the past. There's got to be something in there to hold it up. I mean, it really is. We have to think about it like building a house. If there is not a foundation for the house to stand on, you may get it to stand, but over time, it's going to fall, right? I'm so good with analogies. I apologize ahead of time. Okay, and she asks what product. There's a lot of products out there. You guys, I have a product that I love, and I love it not because it's mine. I've said this so many times. People are like, just stop talking about how it's not about how it's yours. Just tell people it's fine. I have a product that I love, that I use, and it is my go-to product for volume. But it just so happens that it's mine. I got lucky that we were able to create it. But all in all, I've used a lot of them, but I haven't used all of them. So I love Fat Hair, which is my product. You can find it on my website right now. I'm actually getting another shipment in at the end of this month. At the end of this week. Finally, it's been out because people love it. But with that said, there's another product called Styling Cream from Bumble and Bumble that is also fantastic. So that's a really great product for volume. You're definitely going to feel that in your hair more than you're going to feel the fat hair in your hair. So keep that in mind as well. In the UK, I do believe that you can get styling cream in the UK because I think they sell it over there. So I would check for that. Yeah, you guys, the UK and Canada, I apologize that I can't ship over there yet. It drives me insane, but it's so expensive that it's not even, it would be worth it to you. I would feel bad. Here's an $85 shipping and handling charge. It's insane. Okay, so let's see. All right, so let's move on to some questions. Guys, if you're getting value from this, first of all, I appreciate it. Feel free, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. There's a little dollar sign at the very bottom of this. Is never, ever, ever expected. However, always appreciated. If you feel the desire to support the channel financially, there's a little button there. Click that and you can support us. But nonetheless, let's move on. So, okay, I do have a question for you guys, and I want your answer. I want your feedback on this, because this is something that's very true to me. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to stop doing this because this is part of my channel. It's part of who I am. And I'm very deep into the idea that I want you guys to feel confident. I think that everybody needs to be confident and secure and do ultimately what you find passionate in. I think that's the number one thing that we all can do. And that's what I want you to take from my channel. I want to help you any way I can feel better and just go out into the world and love things more. That's my purpose. That's why I share these hair tips. That's why I share what I share on my channel. If you're new to me, or if you've never seen on my channel before, I typically don't do a lot of live stuff. I don't film a lot from my salon. I do a little bit, but not as much. I typically say I take you on adventures, on hikes, and show you the nature and different stuff, just adventures we're on, and while I teach you about hair. And I know it's random, but it's two things that I'm very passionate about: adventure, travel, and then hair, right? So that's the way I share it. So I did get a comment. I'll read it to you exactly because I want your feedback on this. I got a comment from Deanna Wilson. She said, very silly, too off topic. You might try to consider doing a nature video for another audience. So my question to you, and the way I replied was, how about this? Why don't I ask this live stream what you guys think of that? Am I wrong? I mean, is it insane to be doing random videos? I get that it's random, but is it insane? Do you feel like it's insane? Or are you liking going out into nature while I talk about hair? I get that they don't connect. I'm very aware of that. Okay, this is not my first day. Fully understand that. I also understand that it's something that I'm passionate about. So I would love to hear your feedback though, because number one is that I create content that you guys find value in. Otherwise, why am I here? So I want to know, comment below, let me know. What do you guys think about that? People are saying, Dan says, I love them. Linda says, I love them. Thank you guys so much. Okay, you guys are seeming to like them so far. Fantastic. I really, really appreciate that, because I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get arrogant and pretend that just what I like is what you guys like. I want to make sure that I'm doing what you guys actually enjoy seeing. I want to create content for you, not for me. Okay. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this. I do want to hit a real quick question here. What products do you suggest to make hair smooth and straight? I said, so this is from Kaushik. I apologize. You guys, I'm going to destroy names here, so please just forgive me and don't take offense to it. I'm trying my best. I'm terrible. I can barely read, okay? So as far as products go for smoothing hair out, this gets back to the lotions, potions, stuff like that. Honestly, the finishing products, waxes, oils, pomades, stuff like that. Those are your smoothing agents. Also, you'll see lotions, potions, stuff like that. Those are all smoothing agents. What I would determine, and this is how you can figure out for you, regardless, like, this is my product. I have oils, right? I've got all sorts of products, but my fat hair is hands down my volumizer. I think it's the best volumizer I've ever used, period. This is my oil. There's a lot of oils out there that are great, okay? You don't need to have this one. You need to have a product that functions for your hair, and your hair texture is going to differ depending on who you are. So this may work great for one person. It may not work, or may not what I would recommend for another person. So if you want to create shiny hair, what you want to do is test what's going to work best for you in terms of how much oil the product has. Remember, the oil is going to create the shine. And many times shine is what people equate shine smooth to the smoothness. Now, smoothness comes from two different things. It comes from the shine, and it comes from how much texture you're seeing. So when you flat iron, when you blow dry, how much actual kind of what we would deem as frizziness, for instance, that you're seeing. That is a whole nother subject. If you're moving into oils or waxes or pomades to create that smoothness and that shine, you want to start by figuring out how much oil can I get away with, because it's going to give you a little bit more shine, and many times that can be a big help. How much oil can I get away with? And then you just kind of want to test a few products to see, this is less oily, this is most oily, and in between, which one works best for me? Which one weighs my hair down the least? Which one feels the least amount of grease in my hair? Which one seems to control that little bit of texture as best as it can? Because there's going to be a lot, and it's tough to say without seeing your hair. To back up real quick, and we'll move on here, but to back up, that texture that you're seeing, first of all, when you're blow drying it, make sure you're blow drying your hair down the hair shaft, not up the hair shaft. This is a comfortable position for us to be in, right? Our elbows are low, our shoulders are down. We're holding the air, but the air is blow dried up towards the ceiling, and that is up the hair shaft, which is creating a little bit more frizziness. What's harder to do is to bring that elbow up in a much more uncomfortable position and blow dry the hair down the hair shaft to help smooth that cuticle out. But that's what stylists do. We do this. We don't do this, right? So we're always holding it up here anyway. It's much easier. That's part of why it's easier for us than it is for some of you folks at home. But if you do this, that's going to be the number one thing that's going to help you right out of the gate. But after that, it's going to be a matter of where that frizziness or that dryness or that texture is coming from, and then determining how to address that, determine why it's happening and how to address why it's happening, not trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, if you will. But then once you figured out that, then we're talking about adding a little bit of shine and smoothness through product. And that is where the oils and the pomades come in. Okay, I'm going to jump into some other questions here because some of you wanted to make sure that we got some of these questions asked. So let's dive in real quickly here. All right, Jennifer says, my hair is fine. Let me move this over here a little bit so I can see this better. Okay, my hair is fine and gets oily by the end of the day just from touching my face, which isn't even oily. Just regular moisturizer is what she's using on her face. Roots are not oily. My hair can't take much product without getting limp and weighed down. What can I do, and should I just know I can never have long hair? Currently in a bob, and I wanted to grow it out. What daily shampoo do you suggest for fine hair? Maybe that's my problem. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. Actually, there's likely a lot of reasons that your hair is having that issue. So first of all, we have to separate the oily hair and the volume. Okay, because they may be two different things. If your hair is in a bob shape, then I'm assuming that there's a corner that comes in the front, okay? That's what creates that bob. That means there's length in the front unless it's heavily layered, but even at that, you're still wearing it likely down versus totally tucked behind the ears. I could be off on that, but I have to assume. So if we're wearing this down and it is into the face, and even if there's some layers, this stuff that's touching your face, that's what's probably getting oily and driving you crazy. Now, if that's getting oily, like you said, and that's laying it down, I would actually venture, and I know you say you can't use product, but I would venture to say that the product you've used is not working well for you, but it's likely not the actual product, meaning it's not product in general that you can't wear. It's the product that you've used. Now, what it also may be is if you're using a shampoo that has a silicone in it that's actually building up on your hair. Guys, I see this a lot, and this isn't talked about much, but I see a lot of times where people will use shampoos or conditioners or products that are laced with silicones, and that silicone will build up on the hair. And what that does is when you go to use product for volume afterwards, for instance, I don't want to name names here, but there's a certain product that starts with a P and ends with a Pro V, and not all of them do this, but some of their products, some of their shampoos do this, that legitimately my fat hair, my gel mousse that I use for volume all the time, I love it. I can't even use fat hair with clients that have been using that for a long time. I can feel the buildup on their hair. You can scrape the buildup, the waxy buildup off of the hair. The minute I hit it with fat hair or any sort of volumizing aid, it immediately gets gummy in the hair, and it's got a really hard time trying to get that texture out, and it doesn't create volume. It actually feels like oil, like really oily hair, but it's not. It's just the actual buildup that's sitting on the outer layer of your hair. So it may be that the shampoo you're using or products you're using, conditioner you're using, that could be part of the bigger problem. So what we have to do is first figure out why your hair is reacting to products, why you feel like you can't use products. If that's the reason, then we got to figure out what's causing that, and then figure out a way. And honestly, it would be up to something where we'd have to sit down and I'd have to walk you through all of figure out what you're using. It's something I can answer live on air, unfortunately. But you would want to know first if that's where the problem is, and then we'd have to address that. Change your shampoo, change your conditioner. You'd likely have to use a strong stripping shampoo for a few days to start stripping some of that buildup out, and then use a strong conditioner on that day to make sure you're putting back into your hair what natural oils and minerals and vitamins that your hair needs that shampoo was stripping out. And then you would go to once or twice a week for a few weeks, and then once a week, and then just keep that in your repertoire for once a week, and then use a completely different shampoo on a day-to-day basis, or when you do shampoo more often, to help making sure that you don't use what you were using anymore, and that the new shampoo is not going to rebuild up on your hair like the old one did. Now, if you push that aside and that's not the problem, and your hair is just flat, it's likely actually because of whether or not it's layered. Okay, I know bob shapes, a lot of people don't like to layer them because they're worried about the corner over here, the sides, looking really thin. There are ways you can layer bobs and not have them look thin, even on super thin and fine hair. Yes, I said it, and I'm standing behind it, okay? Even if you have fine, thin hair, I promise you, I can't tell you how many clients I've got that we do this on. You can still layer the top of your head and not have thin pieces on the side. It can still look strong. Guarantee it. Just has to be done right, but I guarantee you can do it, okay? Now, what you'll find from that is if there is that going on and it's all one length, that could be part of why you're not creating the volume, because especially at bob lengths, they have a tendency to get fuller. The fuller they get, flyer it's going to look on top. You lighten that stuff up, all of a sudden you've got a little bit more ability to create volume on top. Now you couple that with the right product, and that is going to create a little bit more volume. So there may be that. We're also looking at why, all of this stuff, the fact that your roots aren't oily, that leads me to believe that it's probably the shampoo or something that's building up, because it's going to build up the same all over, but you're probably feeling your roots going, well, I don't feel it at the roots, I feel it down here. And if your scalp isn't oily, that's what you're relating to it. My scalp isn't really oily. What the heck? I don't know what's going on. Then it's probably not from your scalp. More often than not, actually, typically people with really oily scalps, they don't feel it so much on their midshaft and ends as quickly as they feel it up in their roots, because that's where it's being produced from. So that might be, that leads me to believe it's probably some sort of silicone or some sort of buildup that potentially could be on your hair. And as far as shampoo for fine hair, so guys, heads up, I'm going to be doing a video pretty soon. I actually am connecting with I believe they're called trichologists. I actually don't even know. A literal hair scientist. So somebody that actually knows way more about this stuff than I ever will. Okay, so I'm going to team up with her, and we're going to do some of your questions, and we're going to kind of walk through from a scientific perspective why things are happening and how to address certain things, like maybe frizz or hair thinning, or how to make hair grow, or what's right and what's wrong, all of that stuff. And one of the things actually is when you kind of break into like shampoos and conditioners and teaching people like what to look for in terms of ingredients to stay away from, that's something I really want to talk about, or I want to kind of pull out from her. But with that said, when it comes to shampoos and conditioners, I don't have one specific one that I like for fine hair. to me, it's a much more individual thing. It's why I have a lot of hard time actually answering some of these questions, because I have very gentle shampoos, and typically what I recommend is just a gentle shampoo on most days, day to day. If you've got really oily scalp, then you might want to find something that's got a little bit more. We used to have one that was called Tender Shampoo. It's my own line. Unfortunately, it's my favorite. I no longer have it. I'm now on the hunt for one that's a little bit stronger to pull some of the oil out, but not too strong. So we're still looking for that replacement. But usually it's a gentle daily shampoo with a light detangling rinse. And then once a week, it's a stronger clarifying shampoo to strip out any of the buildup that the daily shampoo didn't strip out. Typically, when it comes to moisturizing and all that stuff, I don't personally use shampoos to moisturize. I use conditioners to moisturize. Yeah, there's a lot of things that deal with hair health, and that's something that I want to talk to our trichologist about, so that we can actually get you guys true, honest, like scientific answers, not my opinion, because I don't know everything as much as I would like to believe so. I don't. Okay, so let's move on. I hope that helped a little bit, Jennifer. Let's see. Gina Reynolds says, I have mostly gray hair, so I use color and highlights. Okay. So she's doing what we call a duo. So she's probably doing the roots, all one color, and then adding highlights as well. For the last 5 years, I can't seem to get my base color right. It looks great for about a week, then fades to an ugly brassy color. It's not so much the highlights, it's the base color that they can't seem to get right. I got sick of paying for this and I started doing it at home. I kind of don't blame you. I use a 7A, sorry you guys, but A would typically mean ash, which is like a green blue base. I use a 7 ash dark, gotta just finish reading that. I use a 7A dark ash blonde for the base. It seems it fades, it still fades though. What do I need to do? Help. So here's the simple answer when it comes to stuff like this. Level 7. So guys, if you're level 7, the number and the first of the color. So if you're doing your hair at home, okay, now keep in mind, I have an entire masterclass where I teach people how to cut and color their hair at home, step-by-step videos where we actually have somebody doing their own hair to show you what to do and what, more importantly, not to do. So this isn't coming from a stylist that doesn't think you should do your hair at home. I totally don't have an issue with it. I have a class that teaches it, okay? I get it. For some people, it makes more sense. I fully understand, especially going on right now. So when you're talking about color, there's levels, 1 through 10, basically. 1 is going to be black, okay? And as you go higher, each level, 2, 3, 4, up to 10, it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter, and then typically really light blonde, almost white is 10. Okay, so each level is going to be a little bit lighter. A level 7 has a tendency to be, if I'm honest, kind of an odd range to me. 6 looks quite a bit darker than 7, and then 7 to 8. 8 is a bit lighter, and then there's not a massive difference between 8, 9, and 10. But for whatever reason, 7 is this kind of in-between stage that has a tendency, especially if you're using, I get why you're using ash, because you're using ash because it's been getting brassy, and you want to counteract that brassiness. But if it's fading and brassy, they could be two different things. If your hair is gray right now, one of the things that's happening is your hair is changing. And so if it's going more gray underneath, you're seeing different tones in it because it's going to work differently. If your hair is all brown, for instance, naturally all one color brown, and then you put a color in your hair, you're going to get roughly the same color across all of that color, right? Of all that hair. But if your hair is light and dark and light and dark, you're going to get a different color from where that color needs to deposit on hair versus where it's actually trying to lift and deposit. All of this, the only tough thing is I also don't know if you're using a semi-permanent, a demi-permanent, or a permanent, because they're going to act differently. Permanents have a tendency to lift the hair color and then deposit on it, whereas semi-permanents just deposit. They don't lift the color. Usually speaking, most people will use a permanent color on gray hair to cover gray because it needs to be a little bit stronger to pigment that gray. But I don't know because it's not said in here. So with that said, if it's fading too fast, what I would probably, just from having the small amount of information I have right here, I would likely try to go just a bit darker with it. I would move from a 7 to, say, mixing a 6 and a 7, or going down to a 6. The reason I said at the very beginning it's odd is because there's a big jump between 6 and 7. It's like black and brown. It's substantial. So start by just mixing a little 6 ash and 7 ash, half and half maybe, and seeing if that helps a little bit. It's not going to make it fade slower. Okay, and that's going to depend likely on what product you're using, but it's going to make it darker to begin with, so that when it fades, you're not seeing that. The lighter hair gets, guys, the more you see brassiness to it, if there's a brassy undertone. If you've got like a level 3 and it's really, or sorry, level 4 and it's really, really, really dark, and there's some red base to that dark or brassy or orange base to that dark, you're not going to see it because it's so dark. It's like, it's such an afterthought of color that you don't even really recognize it. But if you go up to a level 7 or 8 and that same amount of base tone is there, it's going to look red. It's going to look super, it's going to be very noticeable, right? Think of it like this. It's almost like you've got curtains behind you, okay? These curtains are blackout curtains. They're very dark. You can't see any light behind them. But if I lighten those curtains up, whatever's behind that curtain, you're going to see a lot more as it gets lighter. Same kind of thing basically goes for hair color. As the lighter it gets, the more of whatever's behind that, or more of whatever that base is that you're going to see. So darkening it down won't just have a tendency to take longer to get lighter. It will also help to hide a little bit of that brassiness that you are going to tend to see in the level 7, 8, and 9. I hope that helped. There's a lot of info right there. Okay, so let's see. Moving on. Vampire Knight 1972 says, what hair products can we use on our own hair without damaging it for us oldies? Us oldies, you're funny. Okay, so honestly, I can't, I don't even know where to start with this question. So I honestly can't. I wish I could. There's so many products. Like, I'm not sure if you're talking about shampoos, conditioners, styling aids, or whatever. And then as far as the damaging it goes, the bigger question is, what are you doing to your hair, really? And what kind of hair texture do you have right now? So again, this is really, I think, a question maybe you're asking, or if I wanted to blanket it, maybe you're asking more of like, what should we stay away from, in like what chemicals or what ingredients maybe should you stay away from? Silicones are something to stay away from, right? So we all know that now, but this is a better question that I want to actually hit when we talk to the trichologist, so that I can get a deeper insight into this. Because when it comes to the chemistry side of this, guys, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the all-knowing at all, right? There's so much that I don't know. I know how functionally products work behind the chair because I use them, but I know how functionally products work that I use. Right? There's a lot of products out there. There's so many, it's overwhelming. So I wish I could give you a little more insight on this, but I hope to be able to give you more insight onto this at some point very soon. So keep watching the channel. That was a terrible answer. I apologize. All right. Sharon Miller asks, I need help with my balayage technique. Also, rooted highlights. I'm not sure of either. Stylist. As these questions are too technical for the group here? If so, I understand. Thanks, bunches. Well, first of all, you guys, if you're a stylist and you're watching my channel, thank you. Like, that actually means a lot to me, because it's always nice to get the support of peers. So I appreciate you very much. Don't think it goes unnoticed. It is a bit technical, I think, for most of this audience, if I'm completely honest, because it's also something that I would actually have to show you more than actually try to explain on that stuff. My email is below, okay, Sharon. So if you want to shoot me an email or shoot me a Facebook, find me on Instagram or Facebook, shoot me a private message. I might be able to help you a little bit more on that. So I don't want to completely ignore you here at all, but I think that most of this audience is going to be kind of glazed over on this. All righty. So moving on, Vicky says, my long hair past my shoulders, I like that you call that long hair because that's what I call it, and, is straight, no body or curl. Okay, stick straight. I usually just blow dry my bangs and let the rest air dry, but I want to blow dry I want to blow dry it all, and I don't know what styling products to use that won't weigh it down to lay it flat. I've always used mousse, but now it's too much for my hair. Thoughts? So my guess would be that the mousse is actually not too much for your hair. Again, this probably gets back to something building up on your hair a little bit and changing the way that the mousse feels in your hair, or changing the mousse. And then this product is just, you feel it more, it's just gummy. Or as far as it weighing your hair down, if the too much for your hair is really just a base of it's weighing my hair down, I don't feel like I'm getting the volume out of my hair. That could also be that as it's getting longer, you're just seeing less volume because it's getting heavier. So there's a lot of things that could be at play at that. As far as volume goes, I would actually kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of steps to creating more volume. So I hope you were on this earlier, or you can rewind to the first of the video, because there's a bunch of steps that go into creating volume. There isn't one product that works best for volume better than any other products out there. There just isn't. There's one that I like, and there's obviously, everybody has their own that they might love. So it's not just the product you're using. More important than the product even is how you're about doing it. Make sure you blow your hair dry upside down. Make sure you're using a product. Make sure that you're creating bend from roots to ends, like we talked about earlier, and make sure that you're not using or you're not focusing on just the 20% of your hair, the 10% roots, 10% ends, and not the mid shaft to actually create that bend. And then make sure that you have the right cut. If your hair is longer, if it's not layered, and their layers ain't short or not short enough, then you're going to have a lot harder time trying to create that volume. Again, for reasons that we already talked about. Okay, so D asks, I've let my hair gray naturally. Actually, it's silver. Awesome. I love it, but I was considering getting bangs. Okay. I have a deep forehead line that makes me feel more insecure than I would like. Very fair. But all my friends say that bangs would age me because of my hair color. Is that true? No. Moving on. Hold on, we'll get back to it. My hair is shoulder length with long layers at the moment. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that you love watching my wife and myself. Okay, so no, I'm sorry. I fully disagree with the idea that bangs would age you. Certain bangs may age you. Can we back up a second, guys? Walk with me on this for a second. The idea of aging, when I speak of aging, and I have a lot of videos entitled Hair Mistakes That Age You, I'm speaking of looking less youthful. And when I speak of looking less youthful, I'm not saying people need to try to act or look like they're in their teens. What I'm saying is there's certain things that happen as we age. All of us, these things happen. And many times I find for most people that they want to, whatever age we're at, we want to look as alive and vibrant and full of life, right? And as good as we possibly can. It's less about the actual age and more about how do we accentuate things about our face shape, things about our face structure, right? Things about us that we love so that we can be more confident, more vibrant, and look more alive. That, to me, is looking more youthful. Okay, it's not about looking an age specifically, it's about looking more youthful. So when it comes to talking about a situation like yours, and people say, well, it's going to age you, it's going to look bad if you have bangs. No, what's going to age it is if the bangs that are done are not appropriate for your face shape, if they're not appropriate for the shape of your hair, right? If they're not appropriate for what you feel confident in ultimately. If you feel confident in bangs, I would tell my friends to shove it, if I'm honest, because you need to do whatever is going to make you feel the best about yourself, and then everybody else can eat it. I don't care what they say. So if your bangs, for instance, are really, really, really strong and square, and you've got a really full face, and your concern is, I don't want my face to look fuller or more square, then really, really strong bangs are going to potentially make you look older, but realistically, no, they're just going to not flatter you as much. Whereas if you take that same idea and instead you round those bangs more, you open up a little bit more volume in the top so they're not as square across your face and they're not as full, those are still bangs, but that's going to help offset that fullness. It's going to create a little bit more space for some elongation. It's going to take less of that square and it's going to round it a bit more. And the next thing you know, you've got bangs, but these bangs actually accentuate things about your face that you want to accentuate, and therefore you're actually looking more youthful or alive, vibrant, or however you want. All right. So I hope that helps. And sorry, I'll step down from my soapbox, but I hear that so much and it drives me insane that people love to throw their opinion at people. And I'm sorry, but you need to do what you're happy with and what you feel good about. And I promise you, if you do something your friends like, and this is for any style, folks, so please hear me here. I don't care who tells you that a style looks great on you. If you don't feel comfortable in that style, it's going to feel awkward and it's going to wear you. Conversely, I don't care who tells you they don't like it. If you like it, wear it. Feel good, because if you feel confident, you look good, period. That's my opinion, but it's an opinion nonetheless. Okay. Let's see, Catherine. Okay, so first of all, guys, real quick, sorry if you're new, if you're just hopping on, my name is Justin Hickox. Been doing hair for 26 years, been on my own salon for about 20. So I like to kind of just share hair tips, make your life a little bit easier. So feel free to, if you're getting any value out of this and you're new to me, feel free to hit the subscribe button. There is a little button at the very bottom, a little cash button that if you want to support the channel financially, fantastic. I would love it, but it's never expected. But I let people know that it's there if you want to do that. Otherwise, we're moving on to a few more questions, and then we're going to jump into some of your live questions. So there will be a time for you guys to ask those questions. So I'm just going to go through this here real quick. Okay, now let's see. Catherine asks, is it easier to grow out hair all one length and then cut it layers into it, or grow it out with layers already cut into it? Trying for shoulder length, but I had a layered short bob and now have no idea what I'm going to do with it. So Here's a little tip for you guys. If you've got shorter hair and you're trying to grow it longer, here's a couple things. First of all, when do you get your hair cut? Do you need to get it cut every 6 to 8 weeks? No. Don't let someone tell you that you need to get your hair cut every 6 to 8 weeks or trimmed while you're trying to grow it. I'm sorry. I don't subscribe to that idea. Are there times during your grow out process, maybe until your hair gets in the middle of your back, between a bob and that length, that you're going to have to get your hair cut a little bit more often? Absolutely. There are definitely times and there are definitely scenarios. But with that said, as a rule of thumb, I say pay attention to your ends. Go as long as you can go, as long as your ends are strong and you're still getting some length. Then go in to get trimmed. But if you go in every 6 to 8 weeks and the stylist takes off quarter to half an inch, you're never going to see length. Even if they take off less than that, it's going to take you forever to see length. So spend a little time, let your hair get some length to it, then go back in to get it cleaned up. Now, moving along, as far as how to grow it out. If you've got like a bob shape, I always say that you've got to grow through styles. Okay, so one way that you could do that is to grow at one length, but realistically, once you grow at one length at a bob shape and then you get it to your shoulders, it might be fine at that length, but as you get it longer, it's going to not necessarily be the best shape for your face. It's just going to be long hair. You may or may not like that. I personally like to walk my clients through a few things. So I like to, if their hair is really short, I like to get them into a bob and then let that bob shape grow until it starts to flip out on the shoulders. Then once it starts to flip out on the shoulders, I like to layer it a little bit more, break it up a little bit more. The layers are going to balance if they're done correctly. The layers at this length are going to grow, even if it's balanced at this length, meaning the layers are not too short. If you've got length to your collarbone and the layers are not too short for that length and you let it grow out, right? As you're letting it grow out, the layers are still going to balance as it gets longer. They're not going to be too short for the length. So you'll always be able to still get the right shape in it as you're moving forward. So if that length is to here and you're growing that a bit, let it grow. Once it hits the shoulders, break it up a little bit more layering so that you're into a different shape. So you're like, oh, okay, this isn't a bob that's growing out that isn't working because it's trying to be a bob. This is a whole different style that now is right for that style at that length. Then let that grow. Get a little bit longer. Do the same thing. Every time you go back in to get it trimmed, cut it appropriate for that length or whatever shape that you want at that length, and then let that continue to grow. It'll, in my opinion, it tends to have a little bit more fun as you're growing it, but also it allows you to see different shapes so that once you get it long and inevitably you decide that you want to go short at some time, because people always go through that process, cut it short, then they'll grow it out and they'll go, well, 5 years, 10 years from now, I want to go short again, just to have some more fun. Then they want to, well, what looked good? You'll know different shapes along the way that you liked or didn't like versus, well, I don't know. What should we do? Right? It just gives you a little bit more ideas, but more importantly, it also gives you a shape that you like while it's growing out versus just being a haircut growing out. Okay, hope that helped. Moving along, EJ says, will you ever do a video on where to place tape and hair extensions so you can wear your hair up and have them not visible? I am going to work on a video about extensions in general, but I'll give you a little insight as to tape-ins and where you place them so that you're wearing your hair up. First of all, it depends on how you wear your hair up. Second of all, that depends on what kind of volume or length you're trying to create with the extensions. But with that said, and it depends on what extensions you're using. So if you've got tape-ins, typically the tape-ins, they're about yay wide, right? I don't know how many inches that is, whatever, but they're about inch, this wide. Wow. And what they'll do is they'll tape them in. So if you don't know what taping extensions are, is usually there's 2 extensions. They're like a pancake. Okay. You take a section of hair, you place the tape in against the back of against the scalp, you lay that hair over it, right? That hair attaches to this little tape piece with the extension piece hanging. And then you take another extension and you attach it to the top of the tape. And so that you have a tape-in extension, and then in between that little sandwich, you have the hair, and that's how it attaches to the hair. And so what you're asking is if you're going to pull it back? Well, partly it depends on how you pull your hair back, but usually, depending on how large those strips are, however much hair you have to cover that is going to depend on how far it needs to be back on your scalp to create that. So to me, it's going to be an individual scenario. It depends on what your client's hairline looks like, how thick it is or how thin it is. It depends on how thick the tape is. I like to cut my extensions down when I'm doing taped in. So I'm using a smaller piece in some scenarios because it might be enough to get that little bit of hair here, but at the same time, the smaller little sections are easier to hide. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but there's going to be a lot of factors that kind of go into it. So there isn't one, like if you just do them here, then you won't see them, because it is going to depend on what your hair texture looks like, what your hairline looks like, what your how much you're taping in, and how many you need to create the look that you're going for, or the length that you're going for. Okay, moving on. Mary says, I have so much thick curly hair stylists. Are reluctant to approach. Okay, I can understand that. A salon owner was, but they've been closed. Need advice on products and how to work with it. Tangles, dry, uncontrollable, maybe side bangs, long by preference, necessity, grows way too fast to keep up short, mid-length hair. Okay. Highlights break up with the heaviness, layers, miss both. Thick hair and remarkable number of them. So you've got a lot of thick hair, so dense thick hair, always air dry, no style, but open to ideas. You're also an RN. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It also has to be back, so it's got to be back off your face sometimes. So let me just kind of go back to this again. They have closed. Okay, so as far as products go, I do have a product for volume and for control, and not volume, because I know you're probably not thinking of volume, but you might be thinking of control. They can be two different things, okay? But I do have a product that may work really well for you, and I'm gonna do a video on that actually pretty soon, because if you don't know how to use it, you won't use it correctly. But as kind of a rule of thumb, the type of volume, the type of product you're using is gonna be to smooth out the curls, basically, or not smooth out the curls, smooth out the texture, and then define the curls, right? So that's kind of one aspect of this, is how do you control that? So like I said, I've got a product video coming out about that I'm going to do, because there's a lot: gels, mousses, oils, lotions, all sorts of stuff. I've got one that I like, so I will talk about that. But like I said, so there's a lot of options there, so I can't even really jump into that because there's so many. But how to work with it? So dry, uncontrollable. Okay, so as far as working with it goes, it's leading me to think that you're just not getting the overall shape that you're looking for. And likely all of this is, okay, so all of this, having that length, so there's a lot going on, but having the length, first of all, if you don't have layers, which you're already, I think you already know how to basically manage it, because you're recognizing that highlights will help on some way, color will help on some way, but color also will likely add a little bit more texture to your hair, depending on how they're doing it. And that could be good or bad, or maybe good with a little bad, making it look a little bit frizzier, causing it to have a little bit harder time in your mind to control, and therefore you're kind of working against yourself. But it does do a lot for adding more dimension and overall illusion to the shape. So that, to me, it would be really important. So I like that idea. Personally, I would say go for it, or low lights. Another way that you may be able to get the same dimension that you're getting is actually do darker pieces that make your natural pieces look like the lighter pieces. Many times that can give you more dimension, but also because you're adding color and not lifting color to make it highlights, it can be easier on your hair. So, and darker always looks shinier versus lighter, so that also, and healthier typically, so that also might be something for you. But realistically, if it's long by preference and you're gonna have to have your hair long, it's gonna be about layering. Like that's the easiest way to answer this. All of that is gonna be about having layers, having the right shape. It's gonna be the easiest for you to manage because you have so much of it. Layering is hands down, without question, the best way, in my opinion, to take bulk out of hair, because thinning hair can be fantastic, but it also can be very dangerous, and it can be very problematic if not done right and done in the correct texture. And in your scenario, with how much you have, dense and thick, layering would be my number one go-to without question, which you've already kind of seen. So it sounds like you actually have a good idea. You just, honestly, it's going to come down to the right haircut. I wish I could give you a better answer, but that's what it's all of this is basically predicated on, the idea that you just need the right kind of layering. And then after that, it's going to be easier to detangle because you're going to have less hair to deal with, as stupid as that sounds, but it's true. And it's going to be more controllable because it'll have more of the shape. And then the product I'll show you in a future video. I hope that helped a little bit. I know it probably wasn't simple answer like you wanted. Kim says, hey, Justin, I'm transitioning to natural gray hair and make the mistake of trying to rush things along by using vitamin C and shampoo to try and remove old color. Okay. Turn to my natural gray purple. Okay. How do you fix it? Honestly, in that scenario, this is something that even having a course where I teach people online what to do, I would still say this falls into what we call corrective color. And legitimately, if you're going to try to fix that, you're likely going to be trying to pull that blue out potentially, and that gets to be pretty dangerous. I would actually go to a salon for that. As crazy as it sounds. Coming from someone that actually loves to tell people to do stuff at home as a stylist, still, when you're dealing with that much, I don't know what I know what you use, but I don't know what else is on your hair. So there's a lot of factors that can go into this. And anytime you're trying to lift stuff, especially typically like natural stuff out of hair, there can be a lot of things that can go wrong. Yeah, I mean, I lead to believe too that if you give it a little while, it might just come out, or even so. Maybe start with a clarifying shampoo to try to clarify some of that out. Because, I mean, that's tough, man. I wish I could give you a straight answer. I honestly don't know. I would start with clarifying shampoo, break that up a little bit. That might help pull some of that color out. And if it's still not coming out, use it for a few days, not like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because you don't want to clarify every day for 2 or 3 weeks, but use it for a few days. If you're not, maybe shampoo twice, rinse, right? If you're not seeing any shift in color by then I would go to a stylist and actually have somebody pull that color out, if that's what you need to do, because that's just much more aggressive. And there's just so many aspects to once you pull it out, what it's going to look like after you pull it out, because it's not just going to return to if you try to go and pull it out, it likely won't turn back to your exact natural color. You're going to have to go back in then and replace your natural color and color it. So there's just a lot of factors that go into this, unfortunately. Sorry, Kim. Lorraine says, hey, Justin, my hair suddenly started snapping off. What's the best thing to use? I had new medication for 10 days, which made me sick. I'm sorry. That sucks. And since then my hair looks awful. Stopped taking the tablets, but I'm left with hair that needs help. So honestly, when it comes to, I don't know what's going on with the medication, and I won't pretend to know. So defer to better judgment, doctor, that kind of stuff. Don't ask me about that, because I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to lead you in the wrong direction. But when it says it started snapping off, it really depends on why it snapped off. There's a lot going on here. When you're talking about medication and what's going on with the body, there's a whole lot going on. One thing you can try is Olaplex or K18. Both of them are disulfide bond rebuilders. So disulfide bonds are basically the bonds that are in your hair that help to keep your hair intact. When those bonds break down, which they do on a daily basis from everything that we do, any sort of damage will break down those bonds. As they break down, your hair becomes weaker. Think of it like a shoestring. Shoestring is 100 strings. Right? For instance, if 50 of those strings break off, it's still going to be intact, but it's going to be a lot weaker, right? All of a sudden, it's much more susceptible to breaking under any sort of tension. That's essentially what disulfide bonds are doing. As those bonds break down, it's becoming a lot more susceptible. If that's what happened, and that's the reason that your hair is breaking, then Olaplex or K18 can actually go back in. Olaplex number 3 is the one you're looking for, but it would go back in and actually rebuild those bonds and strengthen those hairs again. But with that said, I honestly don't know, because when it breaks into medication, it's really tough. And I don't want to pretend that I know, but I would give that a shot, because it can't hurt your hair. There's no problem with it. But also, if it continues, I would actually probably talk to the doctor about it. Okay, one last one real quick here. Again, guys, if you're just jumping on, my name is Justin Hickox. I do hair. Had for 26 years, sorry. Owned a salon for 20. So trying to make your hair a little bit easier, try to share some tips with you. Today, we're kind of walking through some commonly asked questions, some questions that you guys had for me, so that we can kind of touch base on this. And then this will be up for replay. So if you want to check out the beginning of the video after this, you'll see where we actually went in and I talked about how to create volume, spare tips, specific tips on exactly my kind of secrets to creating volume. It's very simple, very straightforward, but they're very important. So you don't want to miss those. All right, so let's dive in real quick. Sarah says, wow, what an opportunity to have a question answered by you. You're way too nice, Sarah. Thank you. I have lots of hair. My hair is very thick and frizzy, okay? At the moment, it hangs one length below my shoulder. However, it is amazing just after a blow dry. Beach waves, cool. But loses its curl during the day. Gotcha. I'm terrified of layering, but I know the weight is, okay, so yeah, it's layering. And I understand why you're terrified of layering. I fully get it. And guys, so I actually did a video about how to layer, best layering for long hair. That layering technique, technically I use on basically every length. So while it says long hair layering, go back and check out that video. It's not to say that that's the only length range you use it in, okay? It's absolutely the layering technique. There's certain things in it that I say stay away from, that I try to not do at salons, at the salon, that will create the problems that you're likely running into. If someone sits in my chair and there's a problem going on with layering, I'll tell you right out of the gate. If it's you don't like layers, I can almost promise you why it is. 1, they were too short. 2, it was over layered, or 3, they were done too choppy. Okay, those are the three problems. Either those layers are too short for the length, they don't balance, or the layering was just too choppy, ends are too blunt, or over texturized and it looks kind of frizzy or whatever, and it just ends up looking choppy, or it was done too much, layered too much from the recession line to the occipital bone. All of this hair down here, all of that was layered too much and it looks just too shaggy. That's actually where they got the name shag, okay, the shag haircut. It's heavily layered in this stuff. Makes it look very shaggy at the bottom, right? So that's where some of the problems, that's where 95% of the problems arise from, really basically 100%. There are ways to layer it and not have any of those issues. So I promise you, you can't have layers, and realistically, your concerns are going to be addressed by layering. If it's one length and it's long, yes, you're going to get some nice beach wave if you have that texture in your hair. But the likelihood of that sticking around for any period of time, as you're noticing, is slim to none. It's just going to be heavy. So once you lighten that up with layering, you're going to see a lot more movement in that shape. But more importantly, you're also going to see that movement last. So get layering done and just do it right. Honestly, that is one of the things that I'm really not trying to promote my course here, because right now we're actually not even offering it right now. We're going to relaunch the course. I'm changing some things up on this webinar that we've got, all this stuff. So we're going to change that up a bit. I can't even sell it to you if you wanted to get the course right now. But with that said, in my course, I actually talk about this specific thing and how to do that. So it may, if you're feeling like cutting your hair, it may be actually something that would work for you, because it's really easy to address. And so you don't have those problems with layers. You just have to know how to do it. Okay, so let's move on. Michelle says, hey, Justin, I'm a new subscriber. Thank you. Welcome to the fam. I appreciate it. And enjoying your channel. Thank you so much. Wondering if you could address frequency of washing hair, pros, cons for less frequent washing. I wash my hair about every 5 days. There are so many videos and things about this topic. So here's my thing. In the United States, we were trained that you're supposed to shampoo your hair every day, right? It's cleanliness and it's whatever. I don't subscribe to that at all. Fact of the matter is, you need to wash your hair as often as you need to wash your hair to get the results that you want from your overall oil production. There's also the idea of the no poo game, where basically you don't shampoo your hair and your hair produces less oil over time, or your scalp, produces less oil over time. It actually works out really well. I honestly don't want to talk to that because I don't know much about that. I don't do it. I don't tell clients to do it. And it's not that I don't think it works. I just don't have any knowledge as to why it would work or if it works. So I just kind of, it's not really I probably should look into it a little bit more, but that is actually something else that I do want to talk to the trichologist about. I hope I'm saying that right, to the hair scientist about, to see what their thoughts on that whole process is. But with that said, as far as your standard shampoos go in a day-to-day, I would say a few times every, so basically like once or twice a week is totally fine. That is totally normal, unless your hair produces an absurd amount of oil and it drives you insane, or your scalp, I keep on saying hair, your scalp produces an insane amount of oil and it drives you insane to have that and you can't control it. At that point, you're probably going to shampoo your hair a little bit more often, or you use dry shampoo the next day to help soak up some of that oil. But realistically, you don't need to shampoo your hair every day at all. It's just, aside from that one reason, it's not beneficial to your hair to shampoo it every day. You're not going to get better results, is what I'm getting at, okay, from your hair if you shampoo it every day. The fact is, depending on what shampoo and conditioner you're using, you might find that you get worse results shampooing it every day. So it's going to be a personal thing, but I guess the blanket answer I would give you is, it's going to be a matter of how much oil your scalp is producing, how long you can manage that, and more importantly, what feels good to you. But no, you don't need to do it every day. If every 5 days is working for you, stick to every 5 days. That is perfectly fine. I have gone much longer without actually shampooing my hair, but then there's times where I shampoo my hair every single day just because it feels good or whatever. But my hair is also very short, as you can see, and I have a lot of product in it. So I try to get that product back out, and yeah, so it goes back and forth. All righty, guys, got a couple more, and then we're going to jump into some of the questions that you guys have right here. Let's see. D asks, I would love to know what you tell a hairdresser that I want them. Okay, start over here. I would love to know what to tell your hairdresser that I want when I get a haircut. I want something that if I blow dry my hair would look amazing, and if I curl it, it looks amazing. I usually get choppy layers, and I'm not happy. My old hairdresser moved and I haven't found someone else that understands my hair. Also, what are your recommendations on how to cut your own hair with very little choppy layers? I want to be able to do it on my own if I can't go to a hairdresser. Thank you for all your information. I've learned so much. Well, thank you, Dee. I appreciate that. I'm glad that I can help you out. Okay, so first let's hit the first question, which is basically, what do you tell your hairdresser? Everybody speaks differently. So I always say when you're talking to your hairdresser, take photos of things that you like, photos of things that you don't like. I don't like the layers on this one, but I like the length. I don't like the bangs, but I like the layers. Doesn't have to be the exact look. All you're trying to do is give a visual representation as to what you're saying when you say things. We all have different languages in the sense that we speak, right? So I might tell you, hey, tell them not to do short internal layers. And they might look at you and go, what is an internal layer? Right? So I don't want to tell people to say specific things or ask for specific things because your stylist may see that a different way or understand a different way. So what you want to do is take the photos of things that you like and don't like and explain to them not just what you want, but what you don't want. I don't want this. I don't want this. Typically speaking, when I get my hair cut, this happens. What is a choppy layer? Right? I would literally Google, if you don't like your hair look because the layers look choppy, I would say, I'd Google choppy layers. I'd find photos that represent what you see in your hair that you don't like. And I would take that to the stylist and say, I don't like this. My hair always ends up like this and drives me insane. Now, the reason that happens is because, and I wish I had a mannequin here that actually had lighter hair so I could really show you this. But essentially what's going on is if you pull a hair up and you're layering it and you cut it blunt, okay, with your shears parallel to your fingers like this, that's going to leave a line in that head, right, or in that hair, that section. When that section drops, you're going to see that choppiness. Depending on the color of your hair, you're going to see it even more dramatically than some colors and or textures. So what I tend to do is I prefer point cutting into that, meaning the shears are doing this into a little bit to break those ends up. Then I go through literally, and some people you may freak out, but I tell you, I've done this for 26 years and it works every time. I'll go through and texturize the ends with actual texturizing, not thinning shears, they're different. Texturizing shears, texturize the ends just a little bit to break them up even more so that even though it's point cut like this, that point, each one of those can be very blunt. So when you texturize those ends a little bit, instead of making those ends look thin, it just breaks them up a little bit. It softens the edge a little bit so that they're not quite so blunt. Then when you comb them down, you don't see them. Now, here's what happens when people do it at home. Typically what they do, and this is the most dangerous thing you can do, please don't do this. And I see this a lot. You're going to see a video. If you look up how to cut your own layers at home, you're likely going to see a video of people doing what they call a unicorn cut, where they'll take all their hair, put it in a ponytail, pull it forward, and they cut it. Okay, there's a multitude of reasons that can be very dangerous. That can work on very specific textures of hair. But if your hair is not that specific texture, or if you don't want the way that it's going to look, not looking for that style, you're in trouble. You have no control over how short those layers are going unless you really understand layering in hair. You also have no control over how blunt all of those layers are going to end up, because even if you break those layers up as much as you can at the ends, there's still going to be a blunt line. I don't know how to explain it other than it's still going to be choppy. So likely what will happen is you'll end up with layers that are very short and very choppy. And they're going to be too short for the length. And then the only way to fix it is to take that length up. But guess what? Like I said before, layers are balanced, meaning they balance with the specific length. Longer your hair is, longer the layers have to be for them to balance and have a good shape, right? If your layers are too short, you got to bring the length up. But then if they're too choppy, texturizing them enough to get that line out is still going to make them feel a little bit shorter. Well, that might mean you end up bringing that length up even more to get that to balance again, because now the layers seem shorter than they were before. So now you bring that length up. Well, hey, that might not be a big deal, but if you cut them too short, this much difference in length when the hair is makes a big difference in length in actual length. If you've got to take your hair from here to here, that's not a huge amount of overall length. If your hair was down to your waist, that wouldn't be a big deal. But when it's up in this range, that's a really big deal. That just took you from shoulder length hair to a bob. And you're like, oh my gosh, just to get it to balance. So don't do that. Instead, and I can't really explain it honestly because I need a video to show you how I do this. But in my course on the teaching people how to do their hair at home, I actually have you take your hair into very specific ponytails in very specific areas, sectioned very specifically. How many times am I going to say specific? And I take smaller ponytails and more of them to mitigate that concern. And then the way I actually show you how to take those ends off is very much on purpose. We break those ends up a little bit as we're cutting it to make sure that they're already softened so they don't get that choppiness. Then I show you what parts to stay away from cutting so that you don't overlayer it, so you don't get too much layering at the bottom. And I show you how to control what length you're cutting that top layer so that you make sure that you don't get it too short. So I actually will be doing a webinar. So if you want access to the webinar, just go ahead and shoot me. My email is below. It's HickoxHair@gmail.com. Shoot me an email and let me know I want access to the webinar, and we're going to go through. I'm completely redoing it, and I'll go through in a whole process. It's a webinar that teaches you how to avoid home hair mistakes so that you don't make those mistakes, which common ones I see when it comes to cutting and coloring, and how you don't make those happen. So we'll go through that. It's totally free webinar. So if you want access, email me, let me know. But I go through in the actual masterclass I have how to make sure that all of those things don't happen. But the best way as far as a stylist goes is to simply take in the photos of what you didn't like and tell them, I don't want this to happen. And then honestly, it's up to the stylist, whether or not they have the ability or they know how to do it. Yeah, I don't know another way there's no way of explaining to them, because I don't want you to say, don't go in and tell the stylist, I need you to texturize the ends, or I need you to point cut the ends, because one, they may take it the wrong way and they might just seem aggressive and they might just get kind of turned off by it and be annoying about it or be annoyed by it. But two, texturizing can be done very wrong very quickly, and it goes very bad. So if you don't texturize correctly, it can thin the ends out way too much, and then it just ends up like these little ends that just kind of get frizzy, and it'll be a terrible, terrible move. So don't do that. Show them what you don't like, and then let them address those problems the way they see fit to address those problems, and hope that they do a good job. Hope that helped. Okay. Judy says, what hair products would you recommend for wavy, curly, medium length hair? I've tried many over the years, but don't seem to work. I would take a break from blow drying it and ironing it in my hair every day. Thank you. I'd like to take a break. Totally get it. I'll be doing a video about that. I have one that honestly is my favorite. So, but if I tell you about it and then you buy it and you use it, you're going to hate it because you're not going to use it correctly. So I need to show you how to use it. But spoiler alert, it's fat hair. That's the same thing I use for volume. We didn't make it for curly hair at all. That was not its purpose. We found out over 20 some years of using it that, oh my gosh, it works better on diffusing curly hair than anything I've ever used. What the hell is happening? And it's incredible, but you have to know how to use it. So I will show you on that. Bounce curl. So Anna just said, try bounce curl. So yeah, if you guys have something that you're loving, comment below. Like, again, I am not a person that thinks that there's not a bunch of great products out there. So go ahead and comment below, let people know what they're using. Okay, I'm going to try to get to some of your guys' questions here real quick, because we've gone through most all of these for right now, and then I'll jump back. Okay, so let me see if I can come back up. If you have a question, now is the time to throw that below. Okay, this is when we're gonna answer those. Thank you for answering, really helpful. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that I can help. Let's see. Okay, so Chillette says, what do you recommend for stopping static in your hair? Oil-based products like oils, like this stuff, can help. It depends on how bad the static is. And I haven't actually tried this, but I want to try it. Dryer sheets. I honestly feel like it would work, but I haven't tried it. So, but I've seen people do it. It's like a little TikTok hack, right? Oil sheets. But logically, I'm like, well, it is static, so maybe that'll work. Give it a shot. Let me know if it works. I don't see any reason that it would be like horrible for your hair. So I feel like it's pretty safe. Give it a shot and let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go down here a little bit more. Can you suggest a good drugstore shampoo? That is a really, really good question. So I guess it depends on what drugstore you go to and what they have. There's a lot of shampoos like TIGI, Tony and Guy. They've got some good shampoos, and there's some stores that sell them. There's some that don't. So Tony and Guy would be a good one. Generally speaking, if I'm completely honest, so I don't think you got to spend a ton of money on shampoos. Okay, I don't personally equate $40 shampoos to being the only good ones. I think that's insane, right? Doesn't mean they're not good. I just don't think that you have to spend a lot to get a good product. So Tony and Guy is usually a pretty strong line. Bumble and Bumble is usually a pretty strong line. Bumble, Bumble, like Bumblebee, Bumble and Bumble. So that is one line. That's a good product line. I would look at them as well. Those two are really, to me, are safe in terms that they have some less expensive products that are really good, that work really well. So I don't have one specific shampoo out of those. That it's going to depend on your hair texture and how often you're shampooing a lot of things, right? But as far as drugstore shampoos go, as far as like the big lines like Pantene, in the kind of like really less expensive ones, honestly, I just say don't use them. And it's not the answer I'm sure you want, but realistically, I've never had somebody sit in my chair that used those products that ended up with anything good happening in their hair. It was always a scenario where like, okay, don't use my products. Don't buy them from me. Go on Amazon. Go get it here. But don't use that. Use Tony Guy or TG or Bumble and Mumble, or use one of L'Oreal. Use one of these other L'Oreal, like the professional stuff. Not necessarily Kerastase, right? Not the expensive stuff, but like Techniart lines, you know, this stuff where you're still gonna spend a little bit more than like $5, whatever, but it's gonna be, in the long run, you're gonna end up spending less on shampoos if you buy the really, really, really cheap ones, but more on product to try to eliminate what's going on that's happening because of that shampoo, right? So it ends up being a bit of a wash. Okay, so I hope that helped a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go down here a little bit. Sorry, I'm looking for... I recently bought and used a bar shampoo made from organic rice. First time I use it, I'm great hair back. I mean, honestly, I don't know if that would work. Like, there's a lot when it comes to shampoos and conditioners and stuff out there that I just don't know. So these are all good questions. These are all good questions. Keep these in your mind, all these points and stuff, because I want to ask the hair scientist a little bit deeper into all of this stuff. Let's go to some of the questions that you guys might have. Let's see what we got. Shruti says, hi, how are you? Hey, I'm doing well. How are you? She says, hi, how are you? I wanted to know how to treat brittle ends. So it depends on what's creating or making them brittle and why they're dry. If they're brittle ends, to me, typically are broken ends, are split ends. That's typically what makes them look brittle. So I'm assuming that that's what you're talking about. Or are you asking, how do you stop them from happening in the first place, right? So if you're talking about how to stop asking or how to stop them from happening, then there's a lot of things that go into that process because there's a lot of things that actually create them. But how do you deal with them on a day-to-day? Typically split ends, you have them trimmed off is the best way to deal with them. Is honestly, you trim them off because they're not going to grow. They're not going to repair themselves. They just need to be trimmed to where they're strong again. And then you manage the way that you're dealing with your hair to create less of them, if at all possible. The way you create less of them is a lot of different things, but a few of them are paying attention to what kind of heat you're using on them. How often are you, so if you're flat ironing your hair, for instance, how long are you spending on the ends, right? How much damage are you exposing those ends to? So that is like the number one thing. Not to say that you can't expose them to heat or anything damaging, but you just want to pay attention to how efficiently you're doing that to smooth them out, okay? The next thing is paying attention to break points. I call them tension points. I call them tension points because it's like scenarios like if your hair is sitting right here, right? Or if you've got layers sitting right here and you're wearing a purse strap that's constantly sitting on those, that purse strap is constantly rubbing up against those ends and that is damaging. So that's a stress point that can cause broken ends. Same thing goes for sitting in a car seat or any seat that you're sitting at for a long period of time. Rub your back up and back forth against those seats. If your hair is long enough, sitting right at the middle of your back, that could cause those ends. There's just a lot of things. So just really be vigilant about paying attention to what is impacting your ends, both physically as well as from a drying standpoint. So physically rubbing up against them, as well as from a drying and styling perspective. That would be the easiest way, or the way that I pay attention to them. Let's see, going down here. Country says, okay, you've convinced me that I can trim my own hair. I'll be studying your videos for a week before I do. Plus, too long. If I make a mistake, I can go to the salon. Thanks. Okay, so you guys, and I'm honestly, like I said, I'm not even selling my course right now, okay? So I'm not trying to sell you on my course. In fact, this video, I'll be taking down after this live ends. So nobody will even be able to see it. Okay, with that said, I do hear this all the time. I don't feel like I can cut my hair at home. I'm with you. Neither did I. People used to ask me all the time, like, do you cut your hair? I'm like, you're insane. I don't cut my hair at home. Myself, I can't cut my hair like this. What are you talking about? And I had friends that actually did their hair. And I was like, how do you cut your hair by yourself? This is nuts. And I always chalked it up to, well, they just have a texture that's more forgiving. No, I cut my hair now. Only because I was like, if I'm going to create a course that teaches people how to cut their hair, I can't be going to a salon or having, somebody at my salon cut my hair. I have to be putting my money where my mouth is. I got to be doing the same thing that I'm asking of these other folks. And so therefore I started 100% cutting my own hair, and I have for the past year. One, I love it because I can do it whenever. I might just leave here in a minute and go trim it up because I don't have to worry about making an appointment. Two, I get to be very specific about what I want because I know what I want for my hair. Here's the thing, even if you think you can't, especially like this is the hardest kind of hair to cut. Short hair, because it's super awkward to get to. Longer hair, bob shapes, like the cuts that I'm seeing from the students that are currently taking the course that are in our private Facebook group, the styles that I'm seeing them create on their own hair blows me away. It's actually far easier than you expect. And the reason it's easier is because we're very specific about 26 years. One thing I do know is at this point, I know how to not make mistakes, right? Like I'm not special, but I know very systematic formats for how sectioning patterns of how to cut hair to stay away from all the standard mistakes that you see. So the way that we approach it isn't I hope this works. It's if you won't make the mistakes that you're concerned about making, because doing this will keep you from doing that. You won't have the ability to make those mistakes unless you do something different from what I tell you. It's so basic. It's way easier. It actually makes me feel like I'm not nearly as cool as I thought I was, because you can totally do this on your own there. And if you think I'm wrong, actually, I think we've got a couple. Linda's in the course, so Linda's seen the videos too, so she might be able to chime in here what she thinks. Yeah, she loves it. It's shocking. Coloring is a little bit more in depth. I won't lie about that. Obviously, coloring is more in depth, especially when you're doing it at your home. But there are absolutely mistakes people make. And the standard step that you see online when you see hair tragedies, it's not the process necessarily that went wrong. A lot of times it's just understanding you don't know enough about the process. You need somebody that actually knows what they're doing. And this is why, guys, I did not teach our course in our masterclass on color. I pulled in the color specialist who has been at the salon, used to train all of our old salon, my parents' old salon. They had one of the top salons in the entire world. And they had an educator that educated all of their colorists on how to do color. And I pulled her and I said, Danielle, you need to teach this color course because you know more about this than I have forgotten. You have forgotten more about this than I know, right? Like she knows color like nobody I know knows color. And that's why I pulled her in, because I'm like, we need the best. And so she came in. Now she trains you on how to do your hair color. And as long as you have the insight as to what not to do and what to do, it makes it so much easier. But honestly, I created all of this because going on YouTube, while it can be effective, there are certain times where it'll work. It can also be a tragedy. And it leads you to believe that you're not capable of doing it. And you absolutely can. I still also think that there's a reason to go to salons. It's a pampering service. It's fun. I think that, you should take that on, but I think you should do that every once in a while. But I also think that some people don't want to have to do that every time. And so they need an option. And that's what that course is about. I'll stop talking about it because I feel like I'm selling it and I'm really not trying to, actually. Okay, so let's move to some of these questions so I can get off that topic. Let's see here. Your products for smoothing hair, will it help gray, ashy, curly, thick hair? Yes, it will. It's actually, it's less for smoothing, it's more for controlling, but it controls texture, separates curl, and that will translate to smoothing in terms of appearance, if that makes sense. Hair salons in the UK have only been open last July and August last year. There's a lot of rowdy and bad haircuts here now. And still, so trends for 2021 for this year, no lie, guys. Your hair trends, I'm not even exaggerating, are all based on COVID styles. All the trends, if you want to be in trend right now, mullets are in trend. I did a video on this as well. Mullets are in trend. Basically, home hair not quite done right, those looks are in trend. So all of the stuff that was really like, hey, kind of messy hair is in trend. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. Like all the stuff looks cool. Like, it all has its place, but it's all stuff that was a trend because of COVID, bringing everybody home and everybody working from home, and all of these like kind of like less polished, if you will, looks became very trendy. And like they can be super cool, but it is funny to me how something like this shaped that trend so fast. Because usually trends are shaped by they're reoccurring, right? So this year's trends will be a reoccurrence of a handful of years ago, maybe the 80s, 90s, whatever. So each decade kind of repeats a previous decade in trending, and then they just modify it mildly for that year or for that decade, if you will. And so typically they're pretty on point, but now it's like a little bit of that, but it's amazing how much of an influence just being stuck at home and how much COVID and the lockdown has influenced it. I guess it's not amazing. It's not shocking, but it's interesting. Let's see. So, okay. So I think we've got those questions answered. I have a couple more, and then you guys, once again, I appreciate you hanging out. But let me just hit a couple of these. I've got a few from Instagram here real quick that I wanted to jump on. So let me just grab those for you guys, and then I'll leave you guys alone. let's see here. Okay, so daily shampoo for fine hair. I think we already covered that. Actually, yes, we covered that earlier. What style is good for a 60-year young, love that you said young, 60-year young woman with a heart-shaped face? So Julie asked that on Instagram. So there's a lot of shapes. So here's something that I'll always say, guys, and I stand behind this. It is not the length of your hair that will work for you or not work for you. It's what you do in the length. And the reason that this is important for you to get is that it's very easy for someone like in a situation like this to ask me what the shape is best for my face shape, and me to give you an answer and you to think, well, that is clearly the length that's going to function best for me, or that's clearly the style that's going to be the best for me because that's the one you gave me. And that's not true. It's very limiting to you. It's not fair, in my opinion, to you. And it's just not true. There are a lot of different things that you can do for your face shape if your face shape is heart or a combination of or whatever face shape it is. And the most important thing is that whatever length your range you want to feel most comfortable in, or that you want, that you do in that length range what's best for your face. So typically speaking, when you're dealing with a heart face, right, you're dealing with a little bit more width through the cheekbones. You're dealing with a little bit more slenderness through the cheek or through the jaw, right? Typically comes to a little bit more point. Many times there's going to be a widow's peak at the top. Not sure if you have a widow's peak, but I'm assuming probably, because that's really kind of like the standard heart shape. Is this plays a huge role in it. So depending on your hair texture, there are a lot of different options that you can do, but the things that you want to kind of key into are not adding too much width again right through those cheeks, because you don't want to accentuate that. You actually want to bring a little bit more width in through here. So you can, depending on if you like this kind of stuff or not, you can do like a swept off bang, right? I don't know, it's tough because I don't know your hair length or texture, but you could do like a swept off bang, okay? And basically the reason that you could sweep it off, or you could do depending on your hair texture again, if you wanted to actually do a center part. No, I am not a person that thinks that everybody needs to be doing a center part right now. Sorry, teenagers, but just because you don't wear a center part does not make you look older. Stop it. But if you were a center part and you wanted to do a curtain bang, you absolutely could do some curtain bang, leave them a little bit longer. You just don't want to have them break right at your cheeks, right, or right at your eyes, and actually open up those cheeks a little bit too much. So kind of pay attention, obviously, to that. But you just want to really add a little bit more fullness through here and take out a little bit more fullness through there. So guys, any shape that you have, if you ask what typically is going to work best for the face shape, if you're just talking about the face shape, and we're not talking about accentuating cheek structure or adding volume in the right areas, right, which is kind of more where I lean than just trying to change the face shape. But if you're trying to change the face shape, typically speaking, whether you like this or not, and I don't care if I agree with it or not, but whether people like it or not, what you're typically trying to do is make whatever face shape you have look more oval. That's the goal. Square face, we want it to look more oval. So what do? Well, we want to soften this jawline so that it's not so square. So if we soften that jawline a little bit, right, then we're going to create a little bit more roundness and take out some of the squareness. What we don't want to do is accentuate anything where we're accentuating more squareness. Same thing goes with heart. If we've got more fullness through here, we don't want to broaden that out more. If we've got a really long face, you don't want to add more length to it. You want to make it a little shorter so you can get a little bit more of that oval face. So if you think about it in that kind of perspective, it'll help you determine what shapes are going to function best for you. With that said, I am more of a proponent, honestly, of focusing more on accentuating facial features than just the face shape. And the reason that those are different is because facial features deal more with drawing your eye to things about your face that you like. Now that may be different than your face shape. And the reason I think this is important is because I lean more towards you feeling beautiful and loving what you have and feeling confident, not falling into the cookie cutter of you need to have an oval face, right? So the way that you do this is look at your face and say, what do you like the most about your face? Is there anything that you want to draw attention to? Maybe it's your eyes. If it's your eyes, bangs will automatically draw attention to the eyes. Or if you've got bangs that are too long, shorten them up a little bit, but do it depending on what's going to draw more attention to your bangs or to your eyes, but also what you're going to feel the most comfortable in. If you hate the idea of doing bangs, don't do bangs just to draw out your eyes. But adding more emphasis right in your eye area, like a little bit more volume, opening your face up a little bit more versus too closing, that can help to open up your eyes again. If you feel like you love your cheek structure, great. We need to follow that cheek structure right? We need to follow that line. So we need to create the volume up in this area, right up through here, to draw more emphasis to those cheeks. If we have more volume up in here and less volume in here, we're going to draw the eye up more, and we're going to accentuate cheek structure versus cheeks. Same thing goes for jawline, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do to accentuate what you like about your face, but accentuate that. If you feel like your face is very symmetrical and you love that symmetry and you want to show that off, great. Center part will help to show that off, because you're drawing the fact that these two sides are very symmetrical. If your face is very asymmetrical, and you don't like that, and you want to hide it, maybe you've got one eyebrow that falls a little bit short and you don't love that, right? Then part it to the side so that you have some hair coming over that, so that you draw less eyes to the idea that your face is asymmetrical, right? Because you're not parting it down the center, so it's a little bit less of an illusion that, hey, look at this. And you're covering this up a little bit so that, not that you're going to wear it like this, but you're drawing a little less attention to this because this eye is exposed, so it's drawing more attention over here, right? So there's a lot of things you can do, but that's kind of the way I would approach it. I feel like that was a really long answer. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. All right. Can hair, so Hippie Chicklet says, can hair be layered without losing precious length? Absolutely, depending on whether or not it's already layered. If it's one length, for sure. If it's already heavily layered, then maybe not. It really depends on what your cut is doing already. Let's see. My hair is thinning. Is there a vitamin you know of that can help? Looking into collagen peptides. So this is also another great question that I actually want to ask our hair scientist about. But with that said, here's what I will say about hair, essentially hair thinning or hair health. There are a lot of vitamins, minerals, nutrients that your hair needs. Okay. There's not one, there's a lot of them. I personally don't love, and this is me, but I personally do not love the idea of going towards a vitamin, like a multivitamin or something of those sorts, to deal with this kind of, with the hair thinning concern. First things first, if your hair is thinning, you need to go see a dermatologist and figure out why is it thinning. You need to get your blood tested. You need to figure out if it's your iron levels. You need to figure out if there's something going on with your thyroid. Like, what is it that's actually creating that hair loss? That's number one. Don't ask your stylist. Honestly, go and have the blood work done to figure out what's up, okay? Now, as far as the nutritional side of it, because that's similar but a little bit different. From a nutritional standpoint, there are definitely vitamins and minerals that your hair needs. Okay, that your scalp needs. Hair grows from the roots, not from the ends. And I think that's something that some people miss, right? They think their hair gets longer. Their hair is getting longer because it's growing out from your scalp. It's not getting longer from your ends. And what's that to say is to think that what's going on internally is not equally, if not more important than what's happening externally, is a little bit insane. We have to recognize that the way we feed our body, the way that we deal with stress, the way that we, whether we're on certain medications or changing our medications, all of those things are very much going to impact our hair's health and the thickness, the density, the color, all of that stuff. So yes, there's a lot of different vitamins. I actually did an entire video about this on my channel. You can check it out. But there's a lot of vitamins that are beneficial towards hair thickness, hair growth, hair in general. And I would definitely say that they're all important and that we need to address those and that you should look for those. There's not one, there's like a multitude of them. But with that said, the best way to get those is actually through nutrition, through natural sources, not through multivitamins, because it's just going to be a better source of that vitamin for you. So to me, it's always a matter of, and people don't like to hear this, and I totally get it, but take care of yourself, get your body active and moving. Blood circulation, stimulate blood circulation is going to help stimulate hair growth, okay? Rubbing your scalp, stimulating blood circulation can help stimulate hair growth. It also stimulates your sebaceous glands, which will create more oil. So keep that in mind if your scalp is really oily, or if you've got dry scalp, another option. And then obviously moving your body is going to relieve stress, right? Exercise, daily walks, whatever you can do to get your body moving, that's going to help with the stress. The stress by itself is also going to heavily impact hair loss and hair thinning. And then from there, it's what are you feeding your body? How are we eating? If we're eating healthy, we're taking care of our body's going to thank us. That's all there is to it. And I dealt with this a lot being a nutrition coach and a health and fitness coach, going through that process and talking to people about actually what they're feeding their body and how they're fueling their body versus feeding their body. That is a really, really, really big component for people. And it's something that we hold very close and dear to us. What we choose to put inside our body is a very personal thing. And I understand that. So I'm not going to tell anybody, you can't do this or you're dumb for doing that. Or that's just not the truth. But being aware that what you're putting in your body or what you're feeding your body is impacting your hair, even though it doesn't seem like it would, It absolutely is. So at least be aware of that, and then recognize that there are certain vitamins and minerals and nutrients that our body needs and that our hair needs. And the best way that we can get those is through consuming them from raw natural foods. And now I'll step off of that high horse, but I think you get my point is really what I'm getting at. All right, you guys, I am going to end it there. I appreciate your hanging out with me. I hope that helped. If you have any questions at all, you know where to find me. If you want to be a part of the upcoming masterclass or the upcoming webinar, it's a free webinar where I talk about home hair mistakes and how to avoid all that stuff. Make sure you shoot me an email at HickoxHair@gmail.com, and I will make sure that you get added to that list so that you can get notified as soon as that goes live. If you've been on one of those webinars before, just know that it will be different. We're going to approach it a little bit differently. We've got some new information for you, so we're going to do that as well. So you might still want to be a part of that. And yeah, if you have any questions, you know where I'm at. Alrighty. Hope you guys had a fantastic time. I enjoyed hanging out with you. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the love and all the support. So you guys have a fantastic one. See you next Tuesday. Oh, actually, this Tuesday I'm talking about if you're considering or thinking about going gray, or if you're already in that process. This Tuesday's video is going to be all about things you need to ask yourself, questions you need to ask yourself before you do it, or if you're in the process that you need to ask yourself now to make sure that you're aware of, as well as I actually have a couple tools, so that if you want to know, like, what will it actually look on me? Like, will gray hair literally look good on my face? Will it work for me? I have a way that you can figure out, that you can get a visual representation of that, of what it will look like. Very realistic too. So yeah, jump on. Otherwise, we'll see you guys later. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your day. You guys take care now. We'll see you. Bye.